Hey everybody, it's Ron from Ron's Basement. Thank you for joining me today. I have some exciting news about First Mining Gold I'd like to share with you. Something that we picked out of a recent interview that Dan Wilton had with, I believe it was TF Metals Report. But before we get into that, I want to briefly, because this piece of information deals with inside ownership of the company, I want to talk briefly about inside ownership. I think inside ownership is generally considered to be one of the most important factors to consider when looking at a company or a stock, when evaluating the company. It's always good to have a high level of inside ownership. First Mining Gold doesn't really have a super, when you just look at the traditional statistics, doesn't really have a great level of inside ownership. I think maybe it's like 3% or 4% max. But there's another way to look at it, which I think is actually more important. I think you have to look at, just for instance, let's say a CEO. How much does his investment in his company represent of his own personal investment portfolio? And what I mean by that is this. You could have a company that has, let's say, 20% inside ownership. Let's say the CEO owns 20% of a $100 million company, so he has a $20 million investment. But if this guy's a multi-billionaire, that's just a minuscule portion of his overall net worth. And the inverse could be true as well. You could have a CEO who, let's say, maybe has $2 million invested in his company, and it's only 0.5% of the total outstanding shares. However, that $2 million that the CEO does have invested might represent, let's say, 50% of his personal net worth. So I would argue the point that the CEO who has a higher percentage of his net worth invested in the company has a stronger conviction and more skin in the game. I think the other thing to look at when it comes to inside ownership, obviously, is have they been buying or have they been selling? So let's head over to the whiteboard. I've got some notes written out. We'll take a look and see what we can find out about First Mining Gold. All right, folks, here we are over at the whiteboard. The first thing I'd like to mention before I get into the inside ownership is just briefly the management of First Mining Gold, of which I am very impressed. Obviously, Keith Neumeyer, the legend in the precious metals mining sector, founded this company, owns a good chunk of the shares still to this day. I will say most recently, I listened to an interview he did with the SGT report where he talked about First Mining Gold, and he, in a very matter-of-fact, confident way, expressed his pleasure with the job that Dan Wilton, the CEO of First Mining Gold, is doing right now. Dan and Mal and Ken and the rest of the team at First Mining Gold are, from the actions and from what I can see, are just doing a great job of moving this company forward under the radar still, but really doing a great job. So let's move on to what I think is the big news, okay? I was listening to an interview at the TF Metals Report with Dan Wilton. It was recorded yesterday, February 21st, I believe, 2020. And in that interview, Dan divulged that First Mining Gold is his largest single investment on a personal level, that he owns over 5 million shares, valued at over $1 million. So to me, that was great news. To me, that shows that he's has strong conviction with the company. He has skin in the game. It is his largest single investment. Now, obviously, he didn't say that he owns 10% of the company. I think Dan would be really happy to own 10% of the company, but for where he is in his career and from, obviously his current financial situation, his position in First Mining Gold is his largest single investment. And I know that he's bought a lot of shares on the open market. So to me, that was great news. Also, in a recent interview, when Keith had said those nice things about Dan, Keith had stated that he was in this most recent private placement that he was adding 1 million shares on top of, I believe, what is already a 12 million share position that he has in place. So to me, this is great news. You know, again, Dan, I'm sure, would love to own 10 or 15% of First Mining Gold. I'm sure if we take up a collection and GoFundMe, he would gladly take the shares. But just the fact that he was able to say, hey, this is my single largest position, right? Let's face it, First Mining Gold is where he gets his paycheck, and it's also his largest investment. So, you know, if First Mining Gold and his investments were his kids, I'm sure First Mining Gold would be his favorite child. So just wanted to share that with you. Some other, you know, news that I gleaned from one of the interviews and pointed out to me from one of the other investors in First Mining Gold is that Eric Sprott is an investor in First Mining Gold. I was not aware of that, and obviously Eric is very well regarded within the precious metals investing world. So lots of good things. We're, you know, we've got a great CEO at First Mining Gold. He's new, is in his first year, very obviously motivated and very sharp, and has, you know, through his actions of buying shares, demonstrated that he is committed to the company. I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video, and have a great day.